Hi, and welcome to Pal and Bud's Chat Corner. I'm Maitreyi,
And I'm Pranav.
your host for this segment. Today, we're going to be talking about interpersonal relationships, and specifically about how they impact our biases and prejudices.
So, where did this topic come from? Well, we recently read the book Together by Vivek Murthy. While the book has a lot of interesting topics, interpersonal relationships are definitely a focus. Our topic today comes from combining learnings in the book with the current state of the world that has so much discontent stemming from prejudice and bias.
Before we go further, let's have some definitions. Prejudice is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Bias is a particular tendency, feeling, or opinion that is preconceived or unreasoned.
Right there. The definitions themselves tell us that interpersonal relationships are bound to have an impact on biases and prejudices. After all, an opinion can't be preconceived if you truly know someone.
But really, how do we form opinions? Where do we start? Science says that we start forming opinions about trust as infants. Humans begin to develop the ability to differentiate between those who are trustworthy and those who are not before their first birthday. In fact, a process called perceptual narrowing defines how babies go from considering the entire world their family at birth to narrowing down that focus to only their trusted circle.
That's an early start. And really, it makes sense. After all, a biological imperative to differentiate between friend and foe is likely what keeps all beings alive. Together has some very interesting tidbits about these biological responses. Here's one. When faced with strangers, possibly feeling lonely, our biological response induces hypervigilance. So we will be careful. But this spiking stress hormones and a sense of self protection mean that we are likely to respond negatively or be less open to those surrounding us. Thus, with the sense of stressed self preservation, we may more easily fall prey to cultural bias, racial stereotyping, or discriminatory practices.
That's good to know. Being aware is the first step, isn't it? Knowing we might be responding to situations and people with stress, maybe we can consciously change our reaction. How do we do that? Well, once we get to know someone, they're no longer a stranger, and our hypervigilance will calm down, allowing for other functions to take over and allowing us to form true opinions. That is an excellent starting point.
The issue in today's world, though, is that getting to know someone, forming these connections, that is hard when so many of our interactions are online. A message or even a video is not a true replacement for a physical interaction, not allowing for us to know the many facets a person that has.
True. When we physically interact with people, see where they live, what they eat, experience how they celebrate, that is when we truly get to know a person. This connection, understanding another, is essential in forming an unbiased view. This is what makes us open to listening to others, to being tolerant instead of distrustful.
This push to form connections is something we each must figure out for a truly non prejudiced life. But that's when we meet new people and learn about new cultures. What about what we already know? Like a baby learning to trust those around it, we first find our community and then get persuaded to follow or change beliefs. That's our foundation. Being open to new people and new experiences can be a challenge when they don't align with what our existing relationship have taught us. Sometimes we don't even know that there is something out there that challenges our views.
Yep, that's right. A great example from Together is the story of Derek Black, a child born to members of the Ku Klux Klan. That family was firmly entrenched in the white supremacist movement, with his father being the founder of the largest and first white power website. Derek grew up with the rhetoric, homeschooled, never having reason to question it. Then he went to college in Florida. With an inquisitive mindset, Derek learned about people who had different views, challenging his preconceived notions. Once his KKK roots were outed, Derek lost most of these connections. A few students, however, continued to talk to Derek, eventually discussing the hard topics. A Jewish student even invited Derek to his religious celebrations. The end result was that Derek eventually transformed his beliefs, breaking with his white supremacist community.
That's quite a story. But even beyond Derek's extreme change, there are smaller changes that can happen with getting to know people. I know I changed some of the views after moving to US from India and seeing that Hollywood didn't necessarily align with the everyday life around me. I am sure even our listeners have their own stories.
True, true. Speaking of stories, that's another one of the ways that you can get to know someone. Together has quite a few other ways as well. Acts of kindness, serving others, simply reaching out, building friendships, laughing together. All truly amazing ways to build interpersonal relationships. But when it comes to prejudice and bias, it's also important to know what your preconceived notions are. That's why pausing and truly getting to know yourself is important. A final concept from the book is that we each have circles of connection, and each circle both represents and impacts our outlook on life and fellow humans.
Really, we encourage our listeners to get their hands on and read the book together. We have barely scratched the surface of everything we can learn and reflect upon.
Here's the takeaway: prejudice and bias are inherent in all of us to varying degrees. Our relationships, both positive and negative, whether deep or passing, all impact our outlook. Some things are biological, but we can make conscious choices to counteract the ancient imperatives. And that is what can help us reach a more cohesive modern world. Thanks for listening.